Van der Weyden also paints the Deposition. Now, what you're looking at is the center panel of a larger triptych, and it's a very odd and interesting piece because it's unclear whether or not we're seeing a painting of the event or a painting of a sculpture or painting of a shrine to the event. And it all comes into that space that they're in. There's this gold background, something that we've seen from the Italo-Byzantine style. We also see it in the Netherlands. We have this sort of framed in box as if they're all existing within this gold background shadow box. Now, the piece is actually going to be commissioned by the Guild of Archers, and you actually see in the tracery in the corners, which you see here, small crossbows, which are the symbol of the Guild of Archers. So it makes sense that he's going to include that, hidden as it is in the tracery in the corner. Now, as this piece as it is unusual, not just for the composition, but also for what you're looking at. What we would typically see here is basically Jesus being removed from the cross and typically handed to Mary in the form of the Pietà, or the Lamentation. Instead, we see something very, very different. First of all, the artist has added a number of characters. We not only have the Virgin, who is depicted in blue, fainting, and actually taking on a body posture that is very similar to that of her son, who's just been taken off the cross, giving us a sense of parallel. His physical suffering and death, her psychological suffering at watching her child die. But we also see several of her half-sisters. We see Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus, John the Evangelist, and Mary Magdalene, amongst others. And these figures obviously weren't there for the crucifixion. Some of them couldn't have been there. Some of them we don't have any record of being there. They're all dressed in middle-class clothes, which again speaks to relatability. You can put yourself in any of these positions if you happen to be in the middle class at the time. The skull at the bottom refers to Golgotha, the fact that this is the place where Adam, in theory, had been buried. We have an odd cross that doesn't seem to fit. After all, the arms of the cross couldn't possibly hold the arms of Jesus. But yet, to make it work within the composition, Van der Weyden has simply shrunk those arms down. To him, the cross is not the most important thing, nor is the angel and the ladder, which we see hidden in the background. Instead, it's the body of Jesus, showing the physical suffering that he's been through. We see the blood running from the scar in his side, the blood from his hands, a little bit from the crown of thorns, again at the feet. And we see different levels of anguish, different forms of grieving taking place throughout. This is not unusual. This would reflect kind of the reality of the grieving process. Everyone goes through it in a different way. What's different here is the fact that the Virgin Mary has fainted. Instead of the stoicism that we're used to with the Virgin Mary from Michelangelo's Pietà, for example, what we see is this very emotional image of a woman who has just watched her son die, and his body is being lowered down to her. You'll also notice that Jesus, unlike the fairly muscular depictions that we see in Italy, where the musculature is there, he's thin, but it's always there. Here, it's missing. It's as if he has fasted for a great deal of time prior to this event taking place. And it's not entirely our classical Jesus either. He's not clean shaven, but he's got a little bit of stubble. He doesn't have the facial hair we might be used to today. The hair itself is missing. So he's done a lot here to play with our depiction, probably to make it work within the chapel in which it was initially intended to go. And it works in a lot of ways. And the use of oil paints comes out here because you can see that subtle tonality that we are used to from someone like Leonardo, but we haven't really seen that much of in Northern Europe.